it was largely inconceivable that couples could cohabitate outside of marriage. Fundamental shift had occurred in American values. For example, in 1962, the state of Illinois became the first state to decriminalize all sexual activities between consenting adults. No-fault divorce laws were passed in one of the major changes that occurs in the early 1960s is that women start to marry much later than before. It rises to the mid-20s. But it meant that women were having fewer children, and they were having them later in their lives, and it meant that there was a growing period when people were single and mature and outside of a family.
I believe that feminism, radical feminism, if you look at the rates, Black women were more likely to be married than white women. To sit here and say that marriage is a white woman's game is a lie. Black women were more likely to be married than white women until the late 60s, 1970s, when the second wave feminism, sexual revolution, the pill, all of that was introduced. Welfare was a part of that as well, in my belief. When that started to take off, you can see marriage rates tank, and it's been tanking ever since for the Black community. Radical feminism, teaching women that they are independent, they don't need a man.
Raise your hand if you're married. None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. One.
Welcome back to the channel, and this video comes from Proverbs 31 University, and it basically talks about the real reason so many Black women are single. So, you see the information on the screen, and I'm all about marriage. And on this channel, I talk to both men and to women, and we're always just trying to get to the core elements of how we can bring both sides together. So in many of the videos, I kind of watch somebody else's video, and then I make my comments to try to even it out, to keep it more of a fair and balanced type of situation. So that is basically what I'll be doing today. And wanted to say a little bit about Proverbs 31. So if you've been tracking with me for a little while, you will know that the Proverbs 31 woman, many people today would actually call that woman masculine. And actually on this channel, we would call her instinct based, because I don't really like the term masculine and really or feminine when we start to deal with people. Because one of the things is that most people, like men and women, most men and women, really is not that much differences between the sexes in the energy that they can produce. You can have a man that really wants to just sit at home, take care of the kids, cook, clean, and that's really all he wants to do. And you can have women who want to basically climb the financial mountaintop and actually be the provider for their family. And a lot of times we demonize people when they are in what society believes, in the areas that they should not be. And one of the things that we talk about a lot on this channel is the fact that, yes, women exist in these spaces. They've always existed in these spaces. And like I say, when you look at something like Proverbs 31, you see a woman that's an entrepreneur. You see a woman that actually has people under her. You see a woman who actually dresses well and takes care of her family. So what you start to see is a very strong woman. And many people, like I say, today would call her masculine. However, what I always, try to let people know about the Proverbs 31 woman, and this is what makes her different, is the fact that the Proverbs 31 woman actually is humble. She is humble, and she recognizes that the world is not about her, that her money is not about her, that her status is not about her, that all these things in life that today we see as selfish things, where women, if they are on that instinct path, they're basically going out there and they're saying, this money is for me. It's my money. I'm going to buy this house for me. I'm going to buy this car for me. Instead of saying, hey, I am doing what I need to do in order to support the family, in order to push my children forward in order to take care of my husband. And when I say take care here, I'm not necessarily saying financial. I'm just saying that we're going to put all this money in one pot. Because see, once you get married, whether you're a male or whether you're a female that's watching, your money is no longer yours. Okay. And honestly, if you're a Christian, it's no longer yours if you're single. Because we recognize, being Christian, that all money is God's. Okay. And he just allows us to use the money while we're on the earth. But once you're married, there is no separation of money. There is no 50-50. There is no 80-20. There is no all of these rules that people are trying to make. Instead, what there is everybody puts all their money into one pot, okay? And then we pay the bills and live life based off of that. But again, that is not what this video is about. So right now, this lady is talking about feminism. And one of the things about feminism, and a lot of people have been kind of beating up on the last wave of feminism. And I want to make sure that I say that it's the last wave of feminism. It's not the core essence of feminism, because the core essence of feminism was just about we want to make sure that women are actually treated fairly. And I believe that even most men, out here want their daughters to be treated fairly. They don't want their daughters to be misused or abused. And if their daughters go out to, get a job or anything like that, they want them to be paid fairly. All right. And I believe that most men, in our modern, situation would agree to that. But one of the things that we're going to break down in this particular video, and remember, I rarely ever see these videos early, so I'm taking it as I get it. But we need to start to look at the timeline. So when we start to talk about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, one of the key elements of that is more than likely half of you that are watching me, well over half, probably 75% of you that are watching this video weren't even born. And the reason why this matters is because the modern man and the modern woman doesn't know a time when women did not have power, when women did not have credit, when women could not buy a car or a house or do for themselves. And that is key. It's a really important thing to know, because if you don't put that into perspective, then what it does is it makes you have a mindset of 50, 60, 70 years ago. And women are not walking in that anymore. So the day that, what we're dealing with now is modern marriage, the current state of marriage. Now, there were certain things that were done, like the lady said, that one time Black women actually were more likely to get married than white women. And feminism, for many of you, depending upon what ideology you feel, a lot of people believe, okay, and there's no real way to say this for true, but a lot of people believe that, feminism, the last wave, was built on the back of Black women, because they used the concept and the way Black women were running their families and were, taking care of a lot of things. And they used that as a way to boost feminism and try to get the mindset of a lot of white women to line up with what we consider today as modern feminism. But then as we look at today's society, now we're at least 2 generations away from that, depending upon how you want to define a generation, whether that's 20 years or 25 years. We're at least 2 generations away. And what we see is when you don't have both people in the home, we see this huge influx of problems that happen within the children. And then we also see from a worldly perspective and from a Christian perspective, we see that we have generational curses, because actually being in a single home, not being married, and not, and I'm saying this because I actually believe women are important too. So I believe women are important and I believe men are important. Okay. But when you take the man out the home, it creates a generational curse type of scenario, when now your children will have a very difficult time actually being married, because they've never spent 18 years under a married couple.
don't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really.
They can have hookup sex, casual sex with whoever they want because they have birth control, they have abortion access, and they have the pill. Remember, abortion also was another thing that the sexual revolution part of feminism, promoted. So it's not a surprise, in my view, when you look at the data, that the marriage rate started to decline, that the abortion rates in the Black community started to go up during that time. Radical feminism, 40 plus years of radical feminism from then until now, still is preaching women chase your career, women have children later, women be promiscuous, don't worry about, having sex with whoever, don't worry about that. You don't have to have sex with a committed husband. You need to just have sex with whoever you want. It's in our culture, it's in our music. We have female musicians, entertainers promoting this stuff. This is what I believe the main reason for the Black woman, not getting married. They're not. Also, when it's funny because there's such a battle of the sexist online between men and women of all races these days, especially because of.
Okay, so before she gets into the battle of the sexes, I did want to add this. Again, for the Christians that are watching, you have an enemy out here. And what does this enemy want to do? He wants to destroy everything that is godly. And the main reason why I want to say this is even if you're not Christian, and you're watching me, if you had a true understanding of the Bible, because a lot of people really don't understand the Bible. What they do is they pick and choose from the Bible instead of taking the Bible in its entirety. One of the things that I've learned and God has actually put upon my heart is that God is kind of like, rules and regulations in one hand and then grace in the other hand. And when you basically see situations where everybody becomes very dogmatic, and there's always rules and regulations and, we're going to put a scarlet letter on every single person that does something that we don't want them to do, they end up in the very dogmatic category. And what ends up being pushed is fear. And it's this fear that you're going to go to hell. It's this fear that your life is going to be bad. It's this fear that this group of people that you trust is going to kick you out. And then if you go to the 100% grace church, so there's no rules and regulations. Oh, God just wants you to live your best life. When you're in the grace world, that is when things go crazy. And then you start to lean on God, as you're going through problems, but you don't want to follow his rules and regulations to keep you out of the problem in the first place. So what I am, letting people know is that God's rules and regulations are actually there to help you. They're actually to bless you. They're like a fence, around a house where right outside the fence, it might seem safe, but there is actually, wolves and panthers and, and tigers and lions and bears and all this other kind of stuff. It exists right outside the fence. And yes, you can go outside that fence. I mean, you can look on the other side and you say, oh, well, it looks clear. There's nothing there. But you don't recognize, if you hop over that fence, there might be something waiting for you. And generally speaking, what these things that are waiting for you is they're playing a game with you. It's almost like fishing, like when we go out and we fish. All right. So what they're doing is they're saying, oh, I'll let him come out of the fence a couple of times. I'll let her come out of the fence a couple of times. I want her to make sure that she feels safe. And once she feels safe outside of the fence, I'll still kind of let her go around because I want her to encourage other people to come outside the fence. And the more this happens over time, what it does is it makes people feel very comfortable in and outside of the fence. And then as you start to get, like I said, more and more people outside the fence, one person gets snatched up and they're gone. But we don't worry about it because it's only maybe 1 out of 10,000 that got hurt. And it's fun outside of the fence, right? And so what happens is over and over and over again, this continues, this process continues until now the enemy attacks almost everybody outside of the fence. And these people have been outside of the fence so long, they don't want to be back within the fence. And then, like I said, we have this situation where the dogmatic people are looking at every single rule and regulation, and they don't quite understand the concept of grace. And it's interesting to me because I've seen a lot of people online, speak with that. See, there is this concept where God is trying to get you to go down a path. He understands that if you leave this path, like I said, if you leave this fence, you're going to hurt yourself, right? But then if you go over and you get hurt, God is still saying it's okay to come back. It's okay to come back. I still love you. But recognize that now you might have got bit, when you was over there, and now your leg is broken and it's hurt and it's bleeding and all this other kind of stuff. And God will tape it up and make sure it feels, good for you, but you're never the same. You might feel better, you might walk better, but you're never the same. And in relationships, we talk about walls going up. Well, how do you think these walls go up? These walls go up because we're really not following what we're supposed to do. And then we get hurt. And then we come back to a safe place. We heal. But then we're like, even though God has built a fence around here and he has his own walls, you know what? I don't trust anything anymore. And I'm going to put up my own walls. So it is the equivalent of you being like, a little person walking around already a big fenced yard, but you have another fence around you. And the more you get hurt, the more fences that you create. And the problem is, if you don't understand why those fences are there around you, you will never be able to remove them. And a lot of the fences get there based off emotion and not based off of logic. But it's that mix, like I said, between the rules and regulations and the grace of God, that is when we actually find freedom.
Radical feminism, or the feminism of the sexual revolution, thought that it was actually helping women, but it actually ended up hurting women because we stopped getting married. No fault divorce was introduced, so you could get a divorce at that point for no reason. If you just didn't want irreconcilable differences, I'm out. Not before. It took a lot to get a divorce. You had to have some evidence of some stuff. You had to have a plan in action. There had to be a real clear reason. It couldn't just be we just don't love each other. We grew apart. We separated. No fault divorce was introduced at that time. And so you have higher divorce rates, high abortion rates, high promiscuity rates, STD rates through the roof. I saw a report that said Black women are the highest numbers of new HIV cases today. Okay, so sexual promiscuity, it doesn't just hurt women. The feminist movement of that time didn't just hurt women, it hurt men, because back in the day, a man had to serenade you. A man had to woo you. A man had to really want you to be his wife in order to get the cookie. He had to work. Now, because of promiscuity, because of the sexual revolution of feminism, a man doesn't really have to do that much work. Now, you would say, yes, they do. Women aren't just sleeping around. Okay, but the stats are showing the abortion rates.
So I agree, with most of what she said there. And I actually believe that what she said is really important. And it's one of the things that I've talked about, every blue moon I've talked about this. Because, see, a lot of women really did think that the sexual revolution was going to liberate women. And what I find is it's really caught them into a deeper trap. And honestly, even men has caught a lot of men into a trap as well. And I understand the concept of you only live once, i.e. that you're very concerned about, if you've gone down a path, like you married what you consider the wrong person, and now you're trying to turn around and you're trying to go the opposite way. But again, a lot of that still goes back to the grass is greener, on the other side, type of scenario. But to get back to the whole thing about, about sex and the whole sexual revolution, what we're dealing with now is, and people have talked about this, where women, unfortunately, are the most unhappy in like the last 30 years. And because sex is so easy to get for men, because people keep believing that women are not sexual creatures. And again, if you've been tracking with me for anything longer than 2 months, you would know that that's not how I talk over here. Okay, women, I believe, are actually more sexual than men. But I believe that because the average woman desires a deeper connection, through that, she basically, tries to protect herself, especially in the beginning, to keep herself from having sex with too many men. So that's when she's very cautious about who she has sex with. But studies have shown the closer a woman gets to 13 to 14 partners, the less she cares about the next partner. And then once you start to really look again, and this is biology, you start to look at the biology of, men and women. Men, 16, 17, 18, I'm just going to be real. We are horny little dogs, right? We want it. We want it bad. But by the time a woman is 50, she wants it as bad as the 16, 17, 18-year-old, which means that somewhere in the 30s, between 32, 37-ish, we're about the same. We want sex about the same. And so once you start to see women in their 30s, what you see is women are saying, okay, well, if I'm dating you, it's been a month, why we ain't done nothing? And I'm gonna be real, here in Atlanta, women are definitely like that. And a lot of men, okay, many that follow me, and like I said, some people don't talk always in the comments, but I always can kind of tell sometimes, based off of, different videos that do well. A lot of women become very concerned because about the double standards. And see, when a woman really likes a man, she will, even if she says, hey, I was going to wait 90 days or I'm going to wait till we married or whatever. A lot of times they don't wait. And we would say in the church that it's the man pressuring her. But in reality, again, just like I said before, a woman that's been out here, she's been around the block a couple of times, she's in her 30s, she has a strong sex drive, an extremely strong sex drive. And many times the woman wants it, like I say, more than the man does. And so, again, a lot of these things we're trying to bridle that, the way, because she's basically talking about, the rules and regulations that they had back in the day. Those things are trying to bridle that. But see, this is one of the things that I think God understood, because God created our biology, so he understood these things. So what he was trying to do is create a system where people were going to be having babies from 18 to 50. So he was like, okay, well, the guy, he's going to, start off strong, but the woman is going to finish strong. So between the two, we got 30 years where they can basically make babies, right? And so now we're in a situation, since marriage has been removed, and you're looking at it, because this is more her theory. I think this is a little bit off of her original topic, but, like I said, I always speak to what, people have said. So now that marriage has been removed, we're in a situation where women are over 40. It becomes extremely difficult for them to get married because they have a strong sex drive. They're out here trying to talk to men, but many of the men might have already had their children. And so now it's like, how do they navigate, that area when, if men don't care so much about getting married and they're not lined up with God, it's like, why in the world would they get married anyway? And so it creates all these conundrums, that exist. And then everyone out here is taking a little bitty nugget that they don't want to do, or they've seen somebody be hurt. Like I've heard women say, well, I don't want to marry a man 5 years older than me or 7 years older than me because I ain't taking care of no man. I've literally heard women say that. I've heard women say that are like 55. And I've encouraged them to maybe date a guy that's 60. Oh, well, men get, y'all die quick and y'all get sick. I ain't taking care of nobody. So then I'm like, okay, well, who you going to marry? Well, I want me a 50-year-old man. And then the question becomes, okay, so you're 55. Why would a 50-year-old man want you when he could talk to a 45-year-old woman? And see, it creates all these things because we're in our feelings. Versus if we had locked up, understood what marriage was about, understood how it would work, then we'd be in a better situation. But like I said, if you've been tracking with me for a while, I feel like the church has not done enough in our modern society to talk about what marriage needs to be and how to navigate through a marriage and to stay with your partner. Instead, what I feel like the church has done is really kind of thrown their hands up and focused on whatever it is topic that they want to talk about, because every church is different. So there might be churches that do talk about marriage, but I find that most of them don't really do that. And a good portion of them are spending too much time on money, and a good portion of them are spending too much time on missionary work, if you want to really know my opinion.
Majority of these abortions are happening to single mothers, a lot of these abortions are happening to mothers who are not married, okay, in the Black community. I'm specifically talking about the Black community. Okay, a lot of these men, they aren't committing to these women. So that makes them feel like, oh, I got to get an abortion because I can't raise this child by myself. There's no man there to help me.
Okay, so let's talk about, what she just said and the lie that was told to, like I say, to women. So what we saw in that video earlier on was you see these women in the 80s, 1980s, and they're basically saying, I don't need a man to raise my children. But now you fast forward, to 2020s. And women are saying, no, I need a man. I do not want to raise this child by myself. And so now they're getting abortions because they're like, I don't want to raise this child by myself. So there's the educational piece that a lot of women, modern women, know that it really hurts them. It takes away from their life. It's not as easy to raise a child by yourself. But now we're in the generational curse. So the curse is fully in effect. And now you have men out here that are trying to figure out, okay, what's in it for them in order to get married. And like I said, we have these little nuggets that keep getting passed on. And one of the nuggets that's being passed on right now to men is that, honestly, that marriage is financially detrimental. So a lot of men now are trying to look past marriage because they're afraid that they're going to get in there, that the woman is going to, cheat on them or do something or whatever, or they might make a mistake and then they get a divorce and then they lose half of their money. And they don't really like that concept. And because so many women have not been educated on how to stay together and be in these marriages, and like I say, the men as well, and like I say, because you guys always have to remember, when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low. So there's people in there, that are going to be fluctuating. But a lot of men are very worried about that. And so now you have this nugget that's become a big nugget. Same thing with women. You have this nugget of creating children and bringing children into this world, which back in the day would have been a great thing. But now women are concerned about it. So it's all of this distrust. And where does all the distrust come from? It comes from the place of not getting married, not seeing really good marriages, not having a community of people that have good marriages that we can talk these things through, in order to stay in the marriage.
You have to understand how all of this is interlocked. The abortion industry is big. Feminism introducing this didn't just hurt Black women, it hurt Black children, because Black children who are not raised in a two-parent married home are going to have worse lives than those who did and are. And it hurt Black men as well, because there's articles on the benefits of marriage. And one of the benefits of marriage for men is that it gives men a sense of responsibility, so they're less likely to make bad decisions because they're heads of a household. But when the sexual revolution came and taught women, or basically taught men, that they didn't really have to woo a woman, commit to a woman, do anything of substance for a woman to get into the draws, of course marriage rates decline. Of course there's less commitment. Of course there's men who are less likely to commit today. So we really have to pay attention to where a lot of this comes from with us. Feminism, in my opinion, the sexual revolution feminism didn't just hurt women, but it hurt men. It hurt men and it hurt children.
All right. So, over here, I'm always about solutions. So I really did appreciate what Proverbs 31 University had to say. I think she was, like I say, more showing, what has happened in the past. I honestly think there's a little bit more to it than what she said. But, again, I don't want to make this video too long, and I've had a couple of videos like this, so you can go check those out if you want to know more of my views on that. But again, how do we fix this? So like I say, if you've been tracking with me on my channel, the number one way is to understand and to just go ahead and lock it in your brain that you're missing information. Like if you are a person that has come from a single parent household, you are missing 18 years worth of information. And then some people, they might have had a hybrid where their parents might have been together for 10 years. And then for the last 8 years, they weren't. So no matter what the situation is, I think you have to be open and honest with yourself and say, okay, this was my reality. It was my reality. So how do I fix it? Well, the first thing is always easy. Like I said, you've been tracking with me for a while. I'm always encouraging people to read Proverbs and Matthew. And why do I say that? It's because there's a lot of information in both of those. And for the women, remember Proverbs, it might have been written for Solomon's sons. However, if you just flip, the information, you'll find it works for women just as well. The next thing is get into lots and lots of healthy books that talk about how to sustain a marriage. You have to be the person that stands in the gap for your generations. So you have to learn how to work things through. You have to learn how to talk things through. You have to learn how to pick better people. And you're going to have to figure all of this out. And you say, well, Jay, that's hard. That's hard to figure it out. Not really. Because I believe that most people, period, they kind of understand what they need to do. They do. It's just that most of us want to deny it and we want to focus in on, what we really want to do. But, most of us know, right? So it's like as you get married, once you get married, all right, and I believe that all of you can if you truly want. Like I said, when you're finding this person, when you're figuring out this person, one of the things that you can ask even before you're married is say, hey, I want to read a book together every year. Hey, I want to go to a marriage conference together every year. I want to do things that build our marriage every single year. And you start with that foundation as you're going into the marriage. But then you're looking for things you might have not known. And then both sides need to be open and honest about what they're looking for. I'll give you an example. I went out with a lady one time and she got frustrated because the way the waitress sat us, my back was to the door and hers wasn't. And so, I didn't think nothing of it because that's how the waitress sat us. She sat down first, the lady I was with, so I really didn't think much of it. But she didn't like that because she was saying that her family had taught her that a man should never sit with his back to the door. And while I'll admit it made me feel a little uncomfortable to sit that way, it really wasn't that big of a deal. And as I started to talk to her, I kind of joked and I said, well, I'm from environments where I ain't worried about somebody coming in, and trying to shoot me with no gun in no restaurant. But I was like, I do understand your point of view. But the point was she was trying to lessen me in that moment because of a decision that she didn't quite understand about who I was. See, we all have to remember that we've been taught a certain way based off what our parents thought was best at the time. So if we're not communicating that information to the person that we're dating, we cannot assume that they were raised the same way. And we also cannot assume that that information that we're giving them won't be pertinent to them. So for instance, after she said that, and I remember I went on another date with a lady and she said something similar. After that, after like 2 women I ran into, I was like, okay, well, this is just going to be my new norm. And so even if a woman was sitting down, even if a waitress was leaning for the woman to sit facing the door, at that point, I would be like, nah, babe, you sit over here. Let me sit there. Because I learned that, okay, there's women out here that's a big deal to them. But the whole point that I'm trying to say is use communication. Tell the person a little bit about what you've been through and what you like. I don't want you to deliver everything. Okay, because we do have people that will manipulate that. But what we want to make sure that we're doing is keeping an open communication. And I find that a lot of people don't do that. If you prefer calls versus texts, you need to say so. And if the person after 2 or 3 weeks does not lean into what you are asking them to do, you need to rethink why you're there. And like I've said, a lot of people, what they're trying to do is they find an attractive person and then they're trying to make that relationship work. That is not a good way to do it. The better way to do it is to try to find a person that, yes, you're attracted to, but you really like their personality and you like where they're going. All right. And so now in this first 90 days, you're evaluating that person to see whether or not you want to move into a courtship situation with this person. All right. And that is a little bit healthier way, to handle it. But you have to communicate and you have to be willing to put in the work. And if you come from, like I say, that situation where your parents were not together, you have to do more work. And it's going to be more difficult and it's going to be more frustrating. And I understand and I wish that there was a way around it. But because some ancestor decided to take the easy route, now you have to stand in the gap in order to fix it. Anyway, there's a lot of really great things in the description. Please go check those things out. There are some marriage books and other things like that if you want to check those out. I'm all about marriage. That's what I'm about. I'm not about really anything else. And please like and subscribe. And I'm going to see you all in the very next video.